What is up, everyone? My name is David Joy, and I'm a senior architect here at Cockroach Labs. I'm going to be showing you a demo where I'm using CockroachDB with AWS Bedrock to build AI-enabled applications. Now, in this demo, I'm actually showing you a banking app, and this banking app is a typical app that we are so used to. Like it can be an app that you're used to using on your own phone. And in this example, this app actually has all the transaction data getting stored in CockroachDB. Now, this is a typical pattern for many of our customers who use CockroachDB for multi-region resilience, where they store all their OLTP data on CockroachDB. Now, to this app, what I've done is I've added a banking assistant, and this banking assistant actually will be able to basically do what an answer engine does. So we are basically transforming this app to have an assistant that can talk through natural language. So what I've done here is I've added a retriever agent. That retriever agent actually talks to both AWS Bedrock and CockroachDB's new capabilities that we are working on with Vector. Now, that's what we are building. But for this app to really work, we have to do certain things. Now, one, we have to look at the existing data in the database, and we have to convert some of this data that is intelligent into, vector data. So if you go and look at this architecture, we have to do literally two flows. The first flow is where we take this existing data associated with, the transactions, which is in CockroachDB, take all of this data, convert some of the data into embeddings, and store that as a vector in one of the columns of CockroachDB. And then we also have to convert and make sure that the RAG application or the retriever agent is able to use AWS Bedrock and is able to talk to CockroachDB as well as with a large language model, and then retrieve everything back for a contextual question that a user might be asking. Now, the vision here is that a user can come in and say, hey, well, how much money am I spending on, buying, say, Nike shoes, or how much money am I spending on traveling in airline for airlines, right? Or I'm spending on, Delta specifically. So it can be very generic questions. What we are doing here is converting our story from where you would go in and look at your app to look for specific things and analytics, to basically interacting with your banking app as an answer engine, and that's the experience that I'm kind of building here in this example. So let's go and jump into this demo and kind of show you what we have. So here I have this banking app. I call it the Rochathon Bank, and as you can see, typically this is the experience we have. We have all of these transaction data. And all the transaction data shows that I'm spending money on shopping, some on food. I did some Uber Eats. There's some of my card information. I see some spend analysis. This is a typical experience. This is a Python-based app. And what I'm doing here is connecting the banking app. I call it the Banco Assistant. And here, it's basically an answer engine. So typically you can enable voice, but here we're just going to interact with text right now. So I'm going to simply come and say, how much money do I spend at Nike, or money I've spent at Nike store? And I'm going to request that. And as soon as you hit that, what's actually happening is in the backend system, and as you can see, it was able to get the response back. But what it really did was actually hit the vector capability in CockroachDB. So we actually have a query that is created that hits the CockroachDB database. It gets all those embeddings based on similarity, retrieves all of that information, and then conveys that to the RAG application response system that I've built with Bedrock. So here, as you can see, I'm using the Boto 3 Python SDK for that is available with Bedrock, and then we are actually hitting Anthropic's Claude 3.5 model that is available in Bedrock. But the key thing here is that it all works so seamlessly because we can now use the vector capabilities in CockroachDB along with the LLM capabilities that the Bedrock service provides. And together, it was able to retrieve that information very quickly, as you saw, and convert all of that and said, okay, I'm spending $1,420 at the Nike store, which is not something that my wife would like to see, but that is what it is. And now let's change this query to, let's say, okay, how much am I spending traveling with Delta? This is like, and my expectation here is that it is able to understand this query and then hit the database to get Delta specific transactions. So as you can see, I'm seeing this in my console that it was able to get this information and actually converted that and said, okay, I spent about 1,068 dollars in transactions with Delta. And how all of this is really working is in the backend, we are storing this data, obviously, with like the descriptions, and those descriptions are converted into embeddings. So this is some example of how much money am I spending at Starbucks, right? So typically we would do this by hitting the database and running some queries and putting it together and going through a complex, method. But now that we have access to large language models, we can actually convert this into a transaction system, from a transaction system to an answer engine. And that's the vision that we are bringing together. So this is an example of how you would be able to build, AI enabled applications on existing data that sits in our database. So you don't have to do any migration to a new vector database. You can actually convert existing data into vector on CockroachDB and then use AWS Bedrock to go and have this experience. So hopefully this gives you a picture of what is the possibility. We would love to talk to you more. So hit me up and my team if you want to learn more. Hopefully that helps. Thank you.